Lauren Hardy didn't wait for a COVID-19 to hit before she took her business virtual. She did it years ago, and she's reaping the benefits today as a wholesaler that never steps foot in her houses. Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. This is Kyle Stanley on The Fearless Investor, and I want to pause really quick and just ask a very quick favor. Number one, have you actually even reviewed or commented on any of our content on YouTube or the podcast? If not, whatever platform you're on right now, do me a favor, either leave a review on the podcast or go right down to the bottom of this video if you're watching on YouTube and just leave a comment. Let us know what you're learning. Let us know what you want to learn. I want to engage and learn more about you guys. But I also, with what that also entails is there's an opportunity to connect with me and get all of your questions answered, whether it is investing overall, real estate investing, Airbnb, the whole gamut. You can just go to fearlesskyle.com/consultation, and it's easy as just clicking there, and you can book a free 15-minute call with me. I'd love to be able to connect with you and learn more about your goals. So Lauren Hardy here on the show today. She's coming from California like myself, but she is in a very expensive area of California. And one of the things that she found early on is that it's tough to find deals in an area like that. So what did she do? She innovated her entire business. She found a way to go virtual, and she has completely changed the trajectory of where her business was going before and where it is at now. She's helping a lot of people along the way too. So let's get to it right now on the Fearless Investor Podcast with Lauren Hardy. Hey, welcome into the show. You're here with me, Kyle Stanley, and Lauren Hardy on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Lauren's coming in from Southern California, and she is an active real estate investor down in SoCal, done a lot of flipping, but now kind of transitioning to wholesaling. And I'm excited to have you on the show, Lauren. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kyle.
Awesome. So as always, what is your most interesting, weirdest, strangest, whatever you want to call it, real estate investing story that we can jump off with?
Well, I love sharing this story. I mean, I get hesitant because I don't want people to become afraid of real estate investing, but the story has a very happy ending. So I do like to share this one. It's the story of me getting sued.
Oh, fun. Very fun.
Yeah.
Let's hear this. Yeah.
Okay, so I started out 8 years ago. I was 25 years old. I had a 1-year-old and a baby on the way. I only had, at this point, I had 3 deals under my belt.
Okay.
So this was my first deal, and it was bigger in nature. It was a property I was intending I was going to buy it, fix it up, and resell it. It was bigger for me. It was a house in Orange County. Orange County, if you guys are familiar, it's a high price area.
Very.
And it was it was a great deal. I bought it thinking, hey, the numbers are perfect. The only hang up is I've got to get this lady out of the house. She had just foreclosed on the home. The note holder, because the property was actually owned by an investment company who bought the note. They own the note. So essentially think of it as a real estate owned property. Think of it as the bank owned it, except for it was a smaller company. It was a note holder.
Okay.
But they foreclosed on the home and they own the house. So they sold me the property. The caveat was, hey, the property is going to be occupied by the person. She was a woman who had foreclosed recently, and she's a little disgruntled. So you're going to have to evict her. She's not moving out willingly. She actually said, you'll have to carry my dead body out of this house. So I was okay, no big deal. At this point, I'd handled one eviction before. I was it's fine. I'll just evict her and no big, whatever. I'll maybe offer her some cash for keys and she'll come to Jesus, and then everything will be fine. And so yeah, no, she totally did not. So I go to evict her, and I actually gave her a cash for keys notice, and I put my phone number, said, hey, if you'd like to chat, happy to talk to you. Let's work something out. I was so trying to play I'm Mr. Nice Guy here, just trying to work something out. Let me get you some cash and you can move out, and give me the house back. That's mine anyway.
Get the heck out. I just want to flip this thing.
Yeah, right. So she calls me and she gives me an earful, and I made my first mistake. I sat on the phone and listened to her for an hour, and she told all
Gosh.
sorts of tales of how there's no way that this foreclosure was done legally, and fraud, that this had to have been fraudulent, and who I bought, the company that I bought the home from is a fraud, and I got screwed too. And like, we're in this together. And she had me going, okay. Like, for a second, I was like, okay, wait a second. I didn't know I bought this. Like, I didn't know I bought this mess. What do you mean the foreclosure was done fraudulently? She had just this orchestrated story of how like this had been done fraudulently.
Okay.
So I listened to her. I said, well, listen, if it was done fraudulently, I'm going to do what's right. Whatever that is, we'll figure it out. I don't know how you unwind the paperwork, but like, I'll do what's right. Let me make some calls. Let me call my attorney. Let me call the company that sold the home to me. We'll figure it out. I was just trying to be nice to the lady. Anyway, so I call my attorney, and then I also call the company that sold the home, and it was not fraud at all. Like, they were like,
Right.
no, this lady's nuts, and she has you going. So I called her back. I said, hey, I'm sorry. You know what? Everything checks out. I don't know what to tell you, but you need to move. This is my final offer. Bye. Well, about it, like a few weeks later, I get served a like 120-page lawsuit, and I'm about to faint. Like,
For what?
I literally open up the door, and it's like,
Yeah.
are you Lauren Hardy? I'm like, yeah. And this guy hands me this thing, and I like look at it, and it's like, it's a lawsuit. And I've never seen one of these things before. And I closed the door, and my daughter, she's like, who was that, mommy? And I'm like dizzy. I like can't even see straight. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is insane. So I'm about to like, I'm about to freak out. So I basically, long story short, at this point, is she's had to sue me. She sued the note holder that foreclosed on her as well. And she sued us for all sorts of things. I mean, when I opened up the lawsuit, I start reading it, and it's so full of baloney,
Yeah.
that I can't even read it anymore. I mean, there's so many lies. She's saying I promised her this, and I did that, and that we fraudulently conspired together to foreclose her home. And like,
Gosh.
it was like the most out like it was outer space type of like lawsuit, where she was pulling at anything, grasping at straws to get her house back. And it's shocking that an attorney actually took her case.
Yeah, no kidding. That's what I was wondering.
Right. And we later realized that they had some sort of relationship, like either they were friends or family friends, and he did it pro bono. And like, anyway, long story short, this lawsuit was a doozy. So not only was I fairly new into flipping homes, my biggest fear was getting sued. Okay. That was like number one fear I have always had, was getting sued. That was my main fear of being an
And it happens
entrepreneur.
almost right away to you.
Right. And it
Yeah.
happened literally like in my first year of being an entrepreneur. And it was, and so the ramifications were quite up there, because I owned the home. I had to pay my hard money loan payments. And the house was locked up. I could not sell it. I could not fix it up, because any money I put into it could possibly get given pretty much to her if for
Right.
whatever reason she
Right.
won the house back. So the house was locked up for about a year and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I worked out a deal with the lenders. It was fine. That, the payments were pretty manageable. I put a person in the home just to basically fix the house up moderately. It was one of my contractor's employees. So he actually kind of fixed it up to make it livable. And he lived in it for free, because the house kept getting vandalized and broken into. It was ridiculous. The thing was getting broken into like every day. The pool, there was a pool, it had like spray paint graffiti on it from gangs. Like, it was ridiculous. The house was such a pain. But I owned it for a year and a half. We did win the lawsuit. It ended up being in my favor. I mean, every judge was like, this is like getting, unfortunately the lawyer was good enough to where it couldn't get thrown out. We
Okay.
actually did have to litigate it, but I won. She got nothing, and she was very upset at the end of it. And at the end, which was the happy ending to the story, was the house went up in value so much because of when I bought it. and property values went up. So I ended up making like $90,000 on that house,
Wow.
but I lost like 10 years of my life
Yeah,
expectancy.
no kidding. I mean, all the stress of that, that was probably worse than smoking, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, that is definitely the great thing there, is that you get it at a perfect time where the market's going up.
Right.
But it sounds like maybe the big learning point there is, what would you say? I mean, if you had to go back and do it again, what would you do differently?
You know, there's nothing I can do as far as what I purchased. I knew nothing. The only thing I would say is I would never have a phone call with a tenant, with a disgruntled tenant ever again, because a lot of the stuff she put in that lawsuit, it was a he said, she said kind of hearsay thing. So if had I never had that call, had I never been nice guy,
Yeah.
she wouldn't have been able to come up with those, some of the causes of actions, because some of the causes of actions were Lauren said this on this phone call, we're suing her for promissory estoppel. So going forward, and in fact the note holder had similar phone calls with her, and she put those things in the lawsuits, certain things he said the same thing. The both of us agreed we will never have a phone call with anybody that's litigious at all. Put
Mm.
everything in writing, exchange emails, do not get on the phone with these kind of people.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, hey, you learned something and you did make a lot of money. So I
I
guess
did.
it could have been a lot worse. But
Yes.
let's take a step back now, Lauren. After a great entry here for a crazy story, let's hear more about the story of your life. What brought you to real estate? Where are you at now? Just kind of catch people up if you can.
Well, what brought me into real estate was I really wanted a job that I could be able to just work from home.
Okay.
I had a 1 year old and I had a baby on the way. And I was learning that it was very difficult to manage the, responsibilities of being a parent and have a full-time corporate job. Both my husband at the time, I'm now a single mom, but at the time I was married and he had a full-time corporate job as well. So my kids' destiny and fate was looking like they were going to live at daycare with our schedules. So one of us had to figure something out. So I basically I was the one that decided, like, hey, I'll start something. I don't care what it is. I'll figure out a way that I can work from home. I got into house flipping. My brother at the time had just started flipping houses about maybe like a couple years prior to that at that time. And he said, why don't you try doing what I do, and maybe we'll work on a couple deals together, and if you can find me a good deal, we'll split it 50-50. Let's try it out and see how it works, and then if it works out for you, you just do it, you just keep going. So that's how I got started. That was about 8 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
So you said that you started in flipping, and now today you told me before we jumped on this that you're doing a lot more wholesaling. What was the transition? What was the reason for the transition?
Yeah. So today I'm doing more wholesaling, and that's primarily because I'm virtual. I live in Southern California, a very high price market, and it's very difficult to find deals here right now. And I've had to, find other markets to do deals in where there's still some seller distress and there's still some, discounted properties available right now in California. It's like there's slim
Tough.
to none.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to take my business virtual about 4 years ago, and I've done everything virtual. I've built homes virtually, I've flipped houses virtually, but my favorite has been to just wholesale
Mm.
virtually, as far as just kind of easy to manage. So that's why I'm primarily wholesaling right now.
And so you started in your backyard, but then you transitioned over to virtual. Talk about that transition. That had to be probably scary, especially if you're not yourself walking those properties, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really had to think hard about whether I wanted to go virtual. And I started with sort of dipping my toe in it, and then I just dove in all the way. So at first I was flipping, houses still in California if I could find the deals, but I had to diversify a little bit, and I decided to work Nashville, Tennessee. That was the first virtual market I was in. and I got into building new houses. At the time, this was like the big thing to do. It still is right now in Nashville, building new development. So I got into some development in Nashville, so that I just felt diversified. If I couldn't find a deal in California, then there was a deal in Nashville to be had. So it was just a way to diversify my business. So that way, I had money coming in from both directions. But I started enjoying the spreads and the margins that I was making out of state much more than I was in California. I
Okay.
realized for the same amount of work, I could make more money out of state. So I just took my business virtual 100%. I think I'd say in 2016. And, I do get California deals if they fall on my lap, but I don't spend money in marketing. I don't actively try. I'm not saying that I would not go back to California. I love my hometown, but right now the margins just aren't where I want to be. So until they are, I'm not looking back.
So that's really interesting to me because I think about the prices of homes in California versus the prices of homes in Nashville, Tennessee, and I think, well, higher price homes probably means more of a spread. But you're saying the opposite. You're saying that your spread and you're making more money with homes in Nashville. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's really a supply and demand
Okay.
situation. So in a higher priced market like Southern California, now we're talking in my area, LAOC, the average house price is $750,000.
Crazy.
It crazy, right?
Yeah.
So in an area like that, you are competing with not just investors, but homeowners who have buckets of cash, okay, that just want to buy a house and to live in it. So if you put a house on the market right now and you just discounted it $10,000 versus like everything else in the neighborhood, that house would have 5 cash offers from foreign investors or just people that are wealthy that want to live, in that neighborhood.
Okay.
When you're competing like that with just homeowners, it is very difficult for you to convince a seller to take a discount on their home. So,
Right.
essentially, in an area, you have to look and say, is this an easier area to convince a seller to take a discount on their home? And that also follows the amount of seller distress. There's just not a lot of distress where I live.
Gotcha.
So you're not going to get the margin. You're just not. You're not going to get, that 10%, cash on cash that maybe you'd like to get, that you could get in an area that's like maybe in a Midwestern market, I like to use the word more balanced market.
Okay.
We're not
Yeah.
balanced here.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I would assume people that are buying homes in Nashville are going to be more of the investor type that's going to probably want to flip the house. Is that more of what your buyer looks like in Nashville?
Right. So I do have to tell you, I'm not in Nashville anymore.
Oh, okay. Got
So
it.
Nashville was my first virtual market. But I actually left Nashville because I didn't want to get into it. Started becoming very competitive there as
Okay.
well. I was competing with developers that were local. So Nashville became very, very, very hot. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving like a California to another California, basically. So I'm in a Midwestern market. So I do like Midwestern markets right now. I like your more balanced market where the average house price is maybe 150,000 to say 250,000. Those are the markets that I prefer to be virtual in.
Okay, cool. So when you decided to go virtual, I got to imagine, along with all that fear, there had to be a lot of ideas that you had of how it would probably go. How did you feel like it was going to go, and did it follow that path, or did you find yourself making a lot of adjustments along the way?
I had no idea how it was going to go. I didn't know anybody virtual at the time. It was very unique. I mean, that term virtual wasn't even really floating around the way it floats around right now. I didn't really know. I basically set out to go, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I don't know anyone else doing it. There's not a lot of courses on the topic. I can't find anything. So I'm just going to figure it out. So I did have some ideas. My dad, actually, it's funny, my dad grew up in Ohio and he had a rental portfolio in Ohio. So that was sort of my first experience with like, well, okay, this is what my dad did. to manage his rentals. How can I apply this to building homes? How can I apply this to flipping houses and wholesaling houses? So I took a lot of these principles of like what I saw my dad do, and I applied it, to me. And there was a lot of trial and error, and there was a lot of banging my head against the wall. I would say that, the 4 years that I'd been doing it could probably have been consolidated into 1 year if I had a coach, to teach me everything. But I guess that's why I am that coach now. So
Isn't that true though? We talk about that all the time. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be resourceful and have someone in your corner that does have the answers to questions
right.
that you just are clueless on. Like when you get sued, for example.
Yeah.
uh, that's awesome. So what is, you sound like you've been in this for 8 years. You're chugging along, you're doing your thing, you're coaching other people. Where at this point, especially with all the craziness going on in the world, where is your purpose laying at right now? Like, what is the reason for you doing what you do?
Right now, I am heavily focused on coaching. I dove into my coaching career in 2020, and 2020 has totally been a year of a lot of things that we weren't expecting.
Right.
But yeah, I'm focused on coaching right now, and I'm really focused on getting my students to the level where they are closing their first deal. A lot of my students are newer. I do have students that actually have experience and they just want to expand. And those I love because those are actually my easier ones. But my newer students, I would say the majority of my students are newer. They're like, say under 3 deals, either 0 to 3. And I'm very, very focused on getting them their first deal. I've actually inherited a lot of students that have done other coaching programs and it didn't work for them. And so by the time they get to me, they're really frustrated and
Mm.
they don't believe in themselves. And I noticed that a lot of like their issues at this point is now more emotional and fear based because they feel like they've tried and nothing's working, and they took this course and that course and nothing works. And then they come to me and I'm going, okay, well, now it's my personal mission to get you to that first deal so you can start, believing in yourself again. And a lot of my students, the reason they come to me is because they were in my exact situation. They live in high priced areas, like the Seattle, New Jersey, New York, California. A lot of my students are from there. And so they're frustrated and they're stressed out, and they are where I was,
Mhm.
6, 7, 8 years ago, going, gosh, like, why is it so hard for me? But yet my friend in Texas is killing it. So, when I see that, it's like my personal mission, to kind of get them to see that, no, it's not you, it's your market. And like, this is what you need to do to work with it.
Plus, comparison is the thief of joy. So you
Right.
start comparing yourself to other people, it's going to be a lonely road. So
Yeah.
give us, if you can, it sounds like you got a lot of students. What are maybe one or two great stories that you have of some students that have had great success?
I mean, it's very rewarding, I have to say. I've gotten students that literally had been doing this business for like, or trying to do the business for like a year and a half. I have one of my favorite students. He was trying, year and a half. He's taken tons of courses. Like he's like an education junkie. Like he has taken tons of courses, been tons of seminars and things like that. And he just didn't have any luck at all. And I was like the first coach to get him a deal in
Mm.
a year and a half. And he was like, it's so nice, to like hear from him and see him grow. So it's not only like in 90 days, he closed his first deal, but now like I think since then he's closed 5. And
Wow.
this has only
Great.
been maybe 4 months or 5 months now since we've been working together.
That's awesome.
Given the first 90 days, he was taking the course, he was learning, we were working together, they got a contract, 35-day escrow, situation. So he has really now gotten that snowball effect, and that's been really, really cool. But there's so many little wins. There's some students that, I see that they're struggling with something, and it's funny. Like I'm starting to compartmentalize it and go, okay, you're falling into here, you're falling into there, because it's almost like everybody has like the same things and it's always like the same struggles. And it kind of goes with like between maybe 4 or 5 things. And they're always some kind of fear at the end of it. Or there's always some kind of like emotional component. it's either like fear, some of it's like habits, like just some people have bad habits and lazy, some of it's laziness, and I have to kind of call them out. And it's not easy to see because they tell me information and then I have to actually look at their data and say, yeah, no, but look at, like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I do it in the nicest way, but I'm like, I got to show you, like, it's like I'm a doctor diagnosing a
Yeah,
problem, and
really
it's
are
really,
though.
it's fun and it's super rewarding.
That's awesome. So we're going to give you an opportunity to get people over to figuring out how they can get connected with you and how they can get your coaching. But I would like to know what is maybe one or two bits of advice if someone is looking to get started, especially in the virtual side of wholesaling. What is your biggest recommendation for where they start?
Okay, well, I'm always going to say get a coach so you don't, draw out your learning curve the way I did. I think a lot of people go to like YouTube University and they try to do everything on their own. And I will say that YouTube will give you a vision, but it will not give you direction. So, my piece of
Good.
advice would be that you do need to get a mentor of some kind. Find somebody that is where you want to be and has the perspective that you have, and pick them as your mentor. You need to be selective about your mentor. You need to pick somebody that has experience in the markets or the type of market that you're getting in. So I would say that's definitely, my number one is get direction. And I would say my other piece of advice would be to commit to it 100%. So don't be like half committed to a virtual market and then half in your own backyard. A lot of people do that. I know that it sounds like I did that, and I did kind of do that at first, but that is difficult. If you're kind of going halfway, it's tough. You need to just make that decision that this is your market, this is what you're going to do, and commit to that market. Don't give up just because you didn't get a deal in 35 days.
I love what you just said there of YouTube will give you vision, but not direction. That is a very, that's probably the best way I've ever heard it described, because so many people, I coach people on Airbnb. So many people get on the phone with me and they're like, oh, there's just so much free information out there. Like, why would I hire a coach? And that I'm going to start using that phrase, because
Yeah.
that's gold. That's really good.
I know. I came up with that one day and I was like, that was good. I'm going to say that all the
Pat
time.
yourself on the back. There you
I
go.
did. I was like, so I say it all the time.
That's awesome. Well, Lauren, how can people connect with you?
I think following me on Instagram is the best way. I post everything on Instagram and then it just kind of gets like flooded into all the other things. So follow me on Instagram. My handle is This Mom Flips. And I'm on YouTube under the Wholesaling Inc. YouTube channel. I've
Okay.
got a ton of videos on there. And I also host their podcast. So if you guys want to hear me talk more, you can check out that.
There you go. That's awesome. I didn't know that you're the host of that podcast too. So
Yeah.
go check her out. Lots of ways to do it, especially there on Instagram. That's always my favorite place, This Mon Flips. And
Yeah.
Lauren, thanks so much for joining us today and helping our audience to conquer the world of investing. Show notes for this one are fearlesskyle.com/Lauren Hardy, just as it sounds, LaurenHardy. And again, she's got a great course. She's got a great way to connect with her, especially there on Instagram or just listening to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. A lot of ways to be able to continue to keep up with Lauren's content. And I would definitely encourage you that if you want to get started in wholesaling, I've got a lot of friends who are in wholesaling and, they're discouraged in the market right now in our backyard, but they're going outside of their backyard and they're learning ways to be able to wholesale in different markets. And it's really reaping the benefits for them too. So I would encourage you that if you think, hey, my market's not right, so I'm not going to start wholesaling, well, get with Lauren, see how you can do this virtually and maybe create a business around your strengths. That's all this is all about really in real estate and investing, is finding your strength, feeding into it so that you can build and scale a business. That's been it for the Fearless Investor podcast. Thanks for joining us in conquering the world of investing.